Hello everyone, my name is Akanksh Nani, and welcome to my YouTube channel Neuro Chat with AG. On this channel, I plan to cover topics that are closest to my heart and support the neurodiverse community. Topics related to neurodiversity, autism spectrum disorder, and more. On the channel, I will interview thought leaders, esteemed researchers, scientists, professors, doctors, and psychologists, seeking their views and updates on their latest work, research, etc. I will also chat with parents of neurodiverse kids and adults and talk about experiences of neurodiverse individuals. Miss Nancy Burrows is an inspiring figure in the autism community. A former writer-producer for Nickelodeon, Nancy pivoted when her son was diagnosed with autism at 2.5. She has spent the past 2 decades writing and speaking about the experiences of parenting an autistic child and is an advocate for increased autism awareness and acceptance. The author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, Raising Kids on the Spectrum, Nancy has also shared her family story with NPR, the Baltimore Sun, and on multiple panels for schools, community organizations, and media companies. Her primary objective is helping her son build a happy, productive life. But by sharing her personal experiences and through her advocacy, Nancy offers hope and guidance to others navigating similar paths and serves as a powerful voice in promoting understanding and acceptance of autism to help create a more inclusive world. Miss Nancy, welcome and thank you very much for the time today.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So to start us off, could you tell us about your background and your son?
Sure. So before I had my kids, I was a writer-producer for Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, and TV Land. Super fun job, and I really loved it. When my son James was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5, I stopped working for television in order to focus on his early intervention and taking care of him and my daughter and really just being super intentional about being a mom. And eventually, when he got a little older, I started writing about my experiences parenting a child with autism. So James was a bright verbal child. He was obsessed with shapes, letters, numbers, sounds, and music. He actually, his first word was circle, and he said trapezoid before he said mama. Like he was really into shapes when he was a toddler. He was hyperlexic and hypergraphic, so he started reading and writing early. And he loved books and toys that made music, but he didn't really play with a lot of other toys. When he was around 2, my older sister raised some concerns that she had. She noticed that he wasn't answering to his name, he wasn't pointing, he wasn't following simple directions. And I remember she said that he seemed to be in his own world a lot with books and music. And at first I was really upset when she brought it up to me. But now I'm so glad in retrospect that she said something, because I sat down and I made a list of all the things that he was doing and the things that he wasn't doing. And I took that list to our pediatrician and I showed it to her. And she actually wasn't concerned. This was in around 2004. So it was like right on the cusp when there was more growing awareness of autism and more kids were starting to be diagnosed. But she said if it made me feel better, we could have him, evaluated. And the first set of people that evaluated him said, oh, this child is much too playful to be autistic, because he was really engaged and playful and affectionate. But I still felt like something wasn't right. And so I took him to a developmental pediatrician who diagnosed him with an autism spectrum disorder when he was 2.5.
So, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced after James was diagnosed with autism?
So I think like the immediate challenge was sort of emotional as a parent. You sort of can't help experience a little feeling of grieving for the child that you thought you were going to be raising. And that's just natural. I think every parent feels that way. Plus you feel worried, like, how am I going to navigate this in the present? And also, what is my child's future going to look like? So there was like this huge emotional piece at the beginning, but then there was also like the logistical piece of figuring out, okay, now that I know this, what am I going to do to help my child? And so trying to figure out, the first part is trying to figure out what your kid needs. doing research, looking for resources, talking to other parents, which actually is, I think, the best resource at the beginning. But then also, even once you find the resources, oftentimes, particularly back then, there were huge wait lists. So I remember like when James was first diagnosed, we were really lucky. We happened to live near the Kennedy Krieger Institute at Johns Hopkins, which is like one of the foremost centers for autism research and therapy in the world. But there was a 2-year wait list for the services that we would need from them. And so, I think for a lot of families, there is this challenge of like realizing what your kid needs and not being able to get it for them because places are short staffed or waiting lists are so long. And that can be super frustrating. And you feel like, precious time is elapsing while you want to be helping your child. So that was a challenge. And then also just kind of the day-to-day navigating, helping him navigate the world, experiencing any of the challenges that he might be experiencing, some sensory things, getting overwhelmed sometimes out in the community, some motor planning, occupational therapy kind of issues that made it harder for him to navigate things on the playground. So those are sort of the big things I think about when I try to think back to the beginning, which for us now is, 2 decades ago.
And what has been your experience of motherhood as a parent of an autistic individual?
How much time do you have? I think, honestly, being James's mom has been like a really extraordinary and intense experience. There have been emotional highs and lows. There certainly were a lot of times over the years where I found myself in tears from some things that were going on in our lives, but also these moments of like incredible joy and amazement at some of the things that his unique brain could do. And I think like the biggest thing is that he made me see the world in a very different way. He changed my perspectives on basically everything about the world. He made me like appreciate the joy in the most unexpected things and in like everyday moments, like just the simplest things. Like he loved the sound of the wheels riding over the bumps on the highway when he was little, and just like the joy that he would get from just like riding down the road, was just incredible. So just like his ability to get joy from the simplest things was really amazing to watch. But then also some of the remarkable strengths that he had, like he has perfect pitch, he has an unbelievable memory. He loves like wordplay, even though he had some, language processing issues when he was younger. But like he was always amazing at word games and puzzles and crossword puzzles and things like that have always sort of astonished me. And the other thing is like he's brought so many amazing people into our lives that we never would have met. Teachers and therapists and college kids and so many people who sort of ended up becoming like part of our extended family that we never would, have met had it not been for the fact that he was on the spectrum. So for me, it's been, an emotional, like sometimes happy, sometimes sad, always filled with love and, very all-consuming experience, I would say. Like, I think I always would have been a very involved and creative mom, but it just amplified all of that so much for me. And I have a daughter who's 3 years older than James, and she's neurotypical. She and James have always been really close. But so I've had sort of the parallel experience of parenting a neurotypical child and an autistic one. And it's just been so interesting to see the things that are different, but also the things that are the same about, just loving and raising a kid.
Thank you. And you mentioned James's passion for music. So I want to ask more about like how that specifically affected him.
So it became pretty clear early on that music was going to be the key to connecting with James. And in fact, when he was diagnosed, the developmental pediatrician had said, you should try to engage with him in a very exaggerated way. And I had always sung to my kids, but after James was diagnosed, I started singing to him all the time, like singing instructions to him, kind of narrating our day, what we were doing, but singing it. And I noticed that when I sang, he like was instantly engaged. He kind of snapped to attention. He seemed to comprehend better. Um, and when he was a baby, we suspected that he had perfect pitch. He used to wake up in his crib, like humming a note. And if I would carry him down to our keyboard, he would just, bam, go right to the note that he was singing. And so I started teaching him the names of the notes. And then when he was 3, we were out to dinner one night, and this band, there was a live band there, and they were tuning their instruments. And James and I were in front of the band, and James started shouting out, "I like that A, nice C sharp." And like the people were totally amazed. So we realized he did have perfect pitch. We bought a piano, and like that piano became the center of our world at home. Like we spent so many hours with him playing the piano, figuring out songs. We would make up songs. It just really became like the center of playtime and kind of every time for our family. And it just made him so happy. Like music when he was little and even all the way through today, he gets so happy when he is listening to music and when he's creating music. So he went to a school that was for kids with a variety of learning differences, and it had an arts-based curriculum. So there was a lot of heavy emphasis on music in the school. And so both at home and at school, music was sort of like the way in for him. He was, his identity at school was sort of like the music kid. And the music teacher would always have him like help her. He would play the piano for the chorus or kind of help involve him in ways that showcased his musical gifts. So that was really great for his self-esteem. And it was also always like like a great topic of conversation with other kids, because that was always challenging for him, figuring out how to engage with other kids. And so music and conversations about songs and stuff was always a really great way for him to connect with other kids. And then he started taking piano lessons when he was about 6. And when he was 10, he started working with a local beatboxer and music producer. And he learned how to compose electronic music and produce his own tracks. So that's something that since he's been 10 years old has been a really huge part of his life. And like I said, brought him a lot of joy, but also has led to some really cool opportunities for him over the years. He was featured in the Baltimore Sun. He and his music were featured on NPR. He ended up in high school when he was a senior doing an internship with our local NPR station as their in-house music composer. And Timbaland has even given him a shout out for his music. So a lot of cool, fun moments in life that it really enhanced his life tremendously.
Yeah, I remember hearing on the Blocks podcast that he said he'd made 144 songs at that point, which is amazing.
Yeah, like his SoundCloud has over 150 songs on it. And he's got some songs on Spotify. And the really cool thing about his SoundCloud is that because it started when he was 10, you can really, especially if you like go way back and do a deep dive, you can like really see his evolution, like not only musically, but like as a person also. And it's pretty cool. And we kind of made it a point to keep most of the tracks public on the SoundCloud. So like you could go back and listen to a song from when James was 10, and some of them are pretty out there and funny. But it's a cool kind of record of his growth, I think.
Could you describe the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on James' transition from high school and how it influenced his mental health and journey towards independence?
Sure. So James was a senior in high school when COVID hit. So his last semester, senior year, was virtual. His graduation was virtual. He didn't have any plans to go to college, but he was going to do all these cool music internships and things that all, of course, disappeared because of COVID. And I think, COVID was really hard for all of us, but particularly for someone who thrived on structure and therapeutic supports and the socialization of school, and then didn't have anything to replace it with when they were gone, it really took a toll on him. So he did okay for like the first part of the first year. I would say he handled it much better than we even thought he would. Like the uncertainty of everything, you know, the anxiety, the just how everybody was so worried about what it was and were they going to get it and what was going to happen and what was happening in the world. And then all of a sudden he just kind of imploded. Like he started having these episodes where he would freeze at the dining room table. Like his face, his affect would go blank and he would just stop moving and he would freeze for like a couple of seconds at a time. And gradually these freezing episodes became longer and more global. Like they used to just happen at the table, and then they started happening other places, and they started happening outside the house. And it got to a point where he was like almost catatonic. Nobody really knew what was going on. We had him evaluated for seizures. It wasn't that. They actually evaluated him for catatonia. It wasn't that. And finally, the doctors came to the conclusion that it was just like very elevated OCD and anxiety that was expressing itself in this unusual way. It was really, really a terrible time for him and for our family. He stopped eating. He lost 20 pounds like over the span of a few months, and he was almost hospitalized. And it was horrible and scary and terrible. And it was like watching him disappear kind of. And so thank God, ultimately, we were able to find a combination of medications that seemed to help him kind of start to come out of it. And during this period of time, our family also ended up moving from Baltimore, where we had lived for James's entire life, to Philadelphia. And we were worried about the move, but also we thought maybe it would like help shake him out of whatever was going on. And in fact, that is what happened. And I think like so much of the OCD rituals were triggered by our old house. And then we moved to this new setting, and he really started getting better. I think being in a new house, a new city, that was so stimulating, and being able to walk a lot instead of being in the car, just really helped kind of jolt him out of whatever was going on. And we found this incredible OCD therapist in Philadelphia. And so he was able to really improve. And like mood wise, I would say he came back to the way he was before. Like he's always been such a genuinely happy and joyful person. And that kind of exuberance came back, thankfully. And he still struggles with this sort of what we call his OCD stuckness, where like it's hard for him to transition from one place to another sometimes, but he's just doing so much better, thankfully. And yeah, once he started to get better, we realized like here we were in this new city, and it was like a full-time job trying to find resources and services for him. And there were some, but like there just weren't enough. And we couldn't really find any day programs that were appropriate for him. And so we started researching residential programs.
So, as you mentioned last fall, James took a major step towards interdependence or independence, leaving home for the first time and going to a residential program. So, how was that experience as a parent and as an advocate?
I mean, it was so monumental. You know, first of all, he's always been really attached to me. And the idea that he would be able to live away from home in any kind of capacity was just something that our family had kind of ruled out. We tried sleepaway camp when he was little, and he was really homesick. So we just kind of never tried it again. But James, you know, he didn't want to go. He would have rather be home, or he would have rather stayed home. But he also was aware, like he would say things like, well, I'm 21, and I know when most kids are 21, like they spend time away from their moms. Or he'd say, like, if it wasn't for COVID, like I probably would have gone to a program already. And so he was sort of willing to take the leap, you know, which was huge. So we did a ton of research, and then we found this amazing program, tiny little program. And he went. We were like all crippled with anxiety beforehand, like leading up to it. And it ended up being such a great thing. Like, the program is wonderful. The staff is so amazing. He loves the staff and they adore him and they understand him. And they've really been able to help him not just start to gain and build independent living skills like cooking and laundry and all of that. But just like, they're all in their late 20s. And so he's able to build these bonds with, these amazing people who really appreciate him just as much as he appreciates them. So as a parent, obviously super scary to take that leap. But I just feel so good. And so, like, I'm so happy for him that he's able to have this experience. And for me as a parent, it's been, incredibly freeing, obviously, after 22 years of, spending almost every waking moment, except for when he was at school, like taking care of him, thinking about him, advocating for him. So like, there's this incredible sense of freedom. And because I saw that pretty quickly after he first got there, he was happy. It kind of took away the anxiety piece of it for me. So it's been overall like a, super positive experience, and really kind of given me my life back in a kind of way that I didn't have it for a really long time. So, and it's, given my husband and I have the opportunity to have some quality alone time, which we hadn't had for years and years, and that's been great. But just knowing that my kid is safe and nurtured and learning things and with people who really care about him, it's been really wonderful.
How has being a parent of an autistic child influenced your parenting style and approach?
So, like I alluded to before, I think I always would have been like a really super involved and creative parent. And I did have like 3 years of being a mom to my daughter where I saw the kind of parent that I was. And I was very like involved in my kid. That was sort of the center of my life. But I think parenting James has helped me to be even more creative, more patient, kind of more open-minded about him and about the world, being like very attuned to the signals that my kid is giving out and like what they mean, what his behaviors might be trying to tell me. Like, James used to love to make noises when he was little, and if I had just sort of said, "Oh, stop making noises," like, we never would have discovered his musical gifts, maybe. And so it's just taught me to be really laser focused on my kid and how he's communicating to me, and to try to find ways to build on that, to build connections through what he's showing me. And it's also, obviously it's been hard over the years. Like, there have been times that, have brought me to tears, seeing him have a hard time, or feeling like he was excluded on a playground, or feeling like he didn't really have close friends the way I would have liked him to have. Sometimes when he had trouble in school, and really having to, figure out ways to help him succeed and work as a partner with his school and his teachers to try to optimize his success. Like, that's all been challenging. But it's also opened me up to a whole new way of looking at the world. And that's been really a really positive, beautiful experience.
And could you share any particular successes or moments of pride in your parenting journey?
My gosh, there are so many. I remember when James was like 3, and I got really excited about something that he did at school. I forget what it was. And his therapist said to me, like, "Mrs. Burrows, you need to like relax, pace yourself, because you don't want to burn out." And you know what? Like, I've never paced myself and I've never burnt out. Like, I always have experienced the success and the excitement of his moments of success, no matter how small or how big. Like, some of the huge ones obviously have been him going away to this program and showing that he's able to handle it, or when he had the internship at NPR and we got to hear his music on the radio. Like, that was really cool. But like, just the countless moments over the course of his life, like when I saw him bonding with the teacher or telling a joke to a peer, or like confronting a fear, like learning how to swim or ride his bike or pet a dog, or, reading some of the funny things that he writes or listening to his music. There's just been like so many moments. Like, it's hard. The little ones stand out just as much to me as the huge ones.
And what resources or support systems have been most helpful?
So, I would definitely say that other parents are the number one best resource. And I know from talking to other parents that all parents think that. So, like, it's always really helpful to have somebody who maybe even is like a couple of steps ahead of you on the path, to share their experiences, to share their resources, a great therapist that they know about. Like, we found James's fitness instructor through another parent. We found so many, like, speech therapists, occupational therapists, swim teachers, like, just parents really are key for resources, and also like as a support system emotionally. I think like being the parent of an autistic child can sometimes feel very isolating, especially at the beginning. And to be able to connect with other parents who are going through their version of that experience is really helpful and powerful. Also, like, now there's just so much more information than when James was first diagnosed, and so many more resources. Like, a lot more books have been written. There's amazing parent bloggers out there. Like, there's a woman named Jess Wilson who writes this blog called Diary of a Mom. She has an autistic daughter and she's incredible. And then there's like a lot of autistic adults who have written books and have presence on social media, who share their experiences, and that's always super helpful. And then, of course, like, speech therapy, occupational therapy, music therapy, ABA, which I know has been the source of some controversy over the years, was always a really positive resource for our family. So yeah, I would say those have been the most helpful.
How do you balance your role as a mother and advocate? What keeps you motivated?
So, like, the most important thing is James, right? James's happiness, James's well-being, helping him build a life that is purposeful and fun and constructive. That's the number one thing to me. And then along the way, if I can find ways to share the information that I'm gaining, to share the experiences that we're having, in a way that can help other families, then that's super important to me as well. In addition to finding any opportunity I can to share our experience to help make the world just a more inclusive place, to, increase awareness and acceptance. That's very important to me. And obviously the mom piece is the bigger piece of the puzzle, but they're sort of intertwined. So it's been a way for me to do both of those things kind of simultaneously, with obviously the bigger weight going towards James as a priority. And what keeps me motivated is just like wanting to see the world be a better place for James and other people with disabilities. To a certain extent, we have to teach him how to interact in the world and get along in the world the way it is. But at the same time, we can try to make the world understand how to adapt themselves to the needs of people with disabilities too.
What advice would you give to other parents who have just received an autism diagnosis for their child?
The most important thing I would say is to remember that your child 5 minutes after the diagnosis is the same as the child 5 minutes before the diagnosis. And so it's just that now you have an explanation for some of their puzzling behaviors or their strengths or their challenges. And you have a label that might be able to help you get services that can help your kid. One of the things that I love about our Chicken Soup for the Soul book is that it's kind of like a portable support group for parents who have just received diagnosis for their kid. I wish there was a way to like put that book into the hands of every parent who, gets the diagnosis, because it really covers the spectrum of experiences, the different ways that autism can impact a child and a family. And there's just so many different stories in there that can help you kind of feel less alone and envision the different ways your story might go as your child grows up. The other thing I would say is to trust your instincts, like your kid best. So just if something doesn't feel right to you, kind of keep going until you find the answer, you find something that's going to help you. Be prepared to do a lot of research and be prepared to advocate for your kid. You can have like no shame, no like timidness, like you have to be bold and advocate for your child. I would say like meet your child where they are. Like if they're playing with a toy in a specific way and it's not the way you normally would think that toy would be played with, just like get in there with them and play with it the way they're playing in order to connect with them. Similarly, like let their interests lead the way you engage with them. I would never compare them to another child's progress. I would only compare them to their progress. I would say seek out other parents to build that community. I would say to remember that patience and kindness and a sense of humor are really powerful tools. And also to remember that like things ebb and flow. Sometimes things are going to go smoothly for a while, like sometimes for a long while, and then all of a sudden the rug's going to be pulled out from under you and things are going to be like horrible. So, you should like enjoy the good times when they're happening, but always be prepared for the other shoe to drop. And like always believe in your child, never underestimate your child, set the bar high for them. And again, like, the saying goes, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So I can only share my experience, the experience of my kid and my family. But like everyone who loves someone with autism, as you know, like has the opportunity to be connected to somebody who experiences the world in some unique ways. And so I think like if we respect that and appreciate that and try to learn from it, and try to make things easier for them in the world the way it is when you can, but also try to be part of what makes the world understand and accept them. Like that's what I would say is really important.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very important message, and you said it very nicely.
I always appreciate the opportunity to share our story. And so thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the great work you're doing.